before the empire woke up, before the generals came with their reports, before the senators arrived with their requests, before the servants, before anyone. There was a moment, every single morning, when Marcus Aurelius was alone. And what he did in that moment was not what most people would expect from the most powerful man in the world. He didn't plan his conquests. He didn't review his enemies. He didn't count his gold. He sat with himself and he accused himself. You might think that sounds strange. A man who commanded armies, who controlled the lives of millions, who wore the purple of Rome, accusing himself every morning before he even got out of bed. But that was exactly what he did. He looked at the day ahead, and he warned himself. Today, he would tell himself, you will meet people who are rude, people who are ungrateful, people who will lie to your face and smile while doing it, people who will disappoint you, people who will waste your time, people who will forget that you are human, and you will have to remain calm through all of it. He wasn't being pessimistic. He was being precise. Marcus Aurelius knew something that almost no one around him understood. The morning is not for optimism. The morning is for preparation. You see, most people wake up and hope the day will go well. Marcus woke up and assumed it wouldn't. Not because he was depressed, but because he had read enough history, seen enough of human nature, and buried enough people he loved to know that hoping and preparing are not the same thing. This practice had a name among the Stoics: premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. Not dwelling, not catastrophizing, not paralysis, premeditation. The Stoics believed that if you rehearse difficulty before it arrives, it loses its power to surprise you. And a mind that cannot be surprised cannot be broken. Think about what that means. Every general, every emperor, every senator who came to Marcus that day with some new crisis, some new disaster, some new piece of terrible news, Marcus had already, in some sense, expected that something would go wrong. He just didn't know what yet. And that made all the difference. There's a scene in his private journals, the book we now call Meditations, that most people skip over because it sounds almost whiny when you read it out of context. He lists the kinds of people he will encounter: the meddler, the ungrateful one, the arrogant one, the deceitful one. He doesn't complain about them, he prepares for them. And then he does something even more interesting. He reminds himself why he cannot hate them. They don't know any better. They are like this because they have not learned what he has learned, because no one sat with them in the morning and taught them to see clearly, because they are acting from ignorance, not malice. This is the part that most people miss when they talk about Marcus Aurelius. They call him a philosopher-emperor and leave it at that. They quote the famous lines. They put his face on t-shirts, but they don't talk about the discipline. They don't talk about the fact that this man, who could have done literally anything he wanted, chose to sit in the dark before dawn and argue with his own worst instincts. Every morning. Not once. Not when he felt like it. Every morning. Because he knew something fundamental about himself. He was not naturally good at this. He was not born patient. He was not born humble. He was not born resistant to flattery, immune to power, unmoved by praise. He built it. Day by day, morning by morning, one quiet hour at a time. And here's what's remarkable about that. We know this because he told us, not in a speech, not in a letter to his generals, in private notes written to himself that he never intended anyone to read. The Meditations are not a philosophy textbook. They are a man talking himself back from the edge of his own nature. You can almost hear the tone. Begin the morning by saying to yourself, he wrote, "Today, I shall meet with the meddling, ungrateful, violent, treacherous, envious, uncharitable." And then, "But I've seen the nature of the good, and it is beautiful." That pivot, that turn from darkness to clarity, that is the whole practice. But there's something else happening in these mornings that is easy to overlook. Marcus Aurelius was preparing not just for the difficulties of the day, but for a specific kind of difficulty, the kind that comes with power. He ruled an empire, which means that every day people would tell him he was brilliant. Every day people would laugh at his jokes even when they weren't funny. Every day servants would rush to meet his needs before he even expressed them. Every day the world would reshape itself around his preferences. And Marcus knew that was poison, because every morning he sat with the reminder that none of that was real. The praise wasn't about him, it was about his position. The deference wasn't earned, it was performed. The power wasn't his character, it was his circumstance. And a man who confuses circumstance for character eventually becomes a monster. So he sat alone and remembered what he actually was: a temporary arrangement of matter on loan from nature, who would return to the earth in approximately the same condition as everyone else. That sounds grim, but Marcus didn't experience it as grim. He experienced it as liberating. Because if you know you are temporary, then nothing needs to be permanent. No insult needs to be carried past dinner. No grievance needs to outlive the week. No enemy deserves more of your energy than a lesson. The morning practice, for Marcus, was really about one thing: getting small. Not humble in the performative way that powerful people sometimes perform humility. Genuinely small, genuinely limited, genuinely human. And then walking into the most powerful job in the world from that foundation. There are people who read Marcus Aurelius and become more arrogant. They quote him at dinner parties. They use his words to win arguments. They wear the philosophy like armor. But that's the opposite of what he was doing every morning. Every morning, he was taking the armor off and showing himself exactly what he was without it. That is the practice. That is what he did before anyone could see him. And maybe that is the real reason meditation survived. Not because it is a beautiful text, though it is. Not because it contains great ideas, though it does. But because it is the raw record of a man who could have been anything and chose every morning to be less than what the world told him he was. And from that smaller, quieter, less defended place, he ruled.